Welcome to Reverence for Reverie. This space is a sanctuary for your inner world. It's not a platform for performance or perfection. It's an invitation into presence. A place where we remember that becoming isn't something we do alone, and that selfhood is not forged through isolation, but through reflection, resonance, and relationship. This episode is called The Mirror and the Field: Why You Can't Become Yourself Alone. And it's an altar for those of us who tried, who got so good at being self-aware that we stopped being reachable, who got so good at holding space that we forgot what it feels like to be held. This is for the ones who know how to help others break open, but haven't found the space safe enough to risk breaking themselves. There is a reason psychoanalysis at its core is relational. It's because something sacred happens when two subjectivities meet, when one field rests inside another without being swallowed, and when you're allowed to be witnessed in full complexity without being corrected. You see, we can't see our own blind spots, and not because we're not intelligent, but because we are structured to protect what has never felt safe to see. The unconscious is, by its very nature, unconscious for a reason. It conceals what the psyche can't yet tolerate, and often what it hides is not pathology necessarily, but brilliance, power, desire, grief that threatens to rearrange the shape of who you thought you were. As Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. So to see what was once hidden, we must enter a new state of awareness, one that does not pathologize the darkness, but instead learns to speak its language. And we need the mirror, not the kind that just reflects our image back to us, but the kind that reflects our depth, that shows us what lives in our shadows, and not to shame us, but to set us free. Every psyche is a labyrinth, and no one walks their own labyrinth cleanly. You loop, you retrace, you circle the same ache for years and wonder why it doesn't release. You convince yourself that if you just meditate more or read more or heal more, you'll somehow eventually crack the code. But healing isn't linear, and becoming is not a solo path. You don't walk out of your conditioning alone, and you don't repattern your nervous system in isolation. You need the presence of another. Someone who doesn't flinch when you say the thing that you're most ashamed of. Someone whose field can hold your unraveling and not rush in to fix it. Someone who hears the contradiction in your story and isn't trying to immediately resolve it. Someone who mirrors your strength even when you forget it. Someone who can hold your silence without needing to fill it. Someone who sees you beneath the survival strategies and doesn't look away. This isn't weakness, it's structure, and it's how the psyche begins to reweave itself. It's in relation, through recognition, through the gentle interruption of an old pattern that's offered not by force, but by proximity to a new frequency. So many of us are still living by unconscious contracts that we didn't even know that we signed. Agreements that were made in childhood, or trauma, or silence. Agreements like, I'll be the strong one. I won't need anyone. If I understand it, I can control it. But the psyche doesn't rewrite these contracts alone. It needs another to bear witness, to reflect that contradiction, and to hold space for the renegotiation. There is a field, both literal and energetic, where transformation happens. A resonance field, like in quantum physics, where proximity alters frequency, When one system holds coherence, another begins to entrain, not by force, by presence. In simpler terms, being around someone that's grounded, emotionally present, and attuned can shift your own internal state, just like a tuning fork can bring another into harmony. A steady nervous system helps regulate a dysregulated one. So it's not about fixing anyone. It's about offering this felt sense of safety and resonance that opens the door for transformation to occur naturally. And yet, so many high achieving, high functioning, high awareness people, the ones who supposedly know better, are the ones that are often most isolated. They've read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, can name their attachment style, and cite their favorite theorists. They've become fluent in self-analysis, but at the cost of connection. They are brilliant in insight, but brittle in intimacy. They can articulate their trauma histories with stunning clarity, but freeze when someone tries to get close. They know how to hold space for others, but they flinch when they're asked what they need. And they can lead rooms, mentor others, hold it all together. But behind the scenes, they are lonely in a way that no accomplishment can soothe. I say this not as judgment, but as someone who has lived this. I have spent seasons so inside my own complexity that no one could reach me, saying I wanted to be seen while simultaneously being terrified of visibility, where I mistook intellectual clarity for energetic coherence within myself, where I convinced myself that needing others was a step backward. Like Winnicott wrote, it is a joy to be hidden and a disaster not to be found. Many of us exist in that paradox. We crave recognition, but feel safest in retreat. We become fluent in self-reflection, but forget what it feels like to be received. And so we perform self-awareness while guarding the parts of us that long to be witnessed. It's like we're hiding in plain sight, praying someone knows how to see. And what I've learned, what my body has taught me, is this. Self-containment is not always the sovereignty that we think it is. It can be a trauma response disguised as strength or as independence. Sometimes it masquerades as being wise or above it all, when really it's the residue of having had to hold it all for far too long. We begin to confuse isolation for clarity and control for evolution. But true evolution is relational, and sovereignty isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about knowing when to let yourself be supported without the fear of disappearing. You can't fully regulate your own nervous system because you weren't hurt alone. You were shaped in relationship, and you must be reformed in relationship. This is not about codependence, but about co-creation. It's about the body learning safety through proximity, the nervous system learning new patterns through resonance. It's about the places in you that froze in the absence of presence, finally beginning to thaw in the warmth of attunement. We don't heal in a vacuum. We heal in the presence of something that's stable, responsive, and real. This is interdependence. This is coherence, and it's the architecture of becoming. Your nervous system co-regulates with others, whether you choose it or not. The question is, who are you letting shape you? What rooms are you stepping into? What frequencies are you attuning to? This is why not every community is medicine and not every mirror is safe. But there are fields, rare and refined and reverent, where that work can happen, where it's not about performance, but it's about presence, and not about knowing more, but becoming more, and in particular, becoming more of yourself. This is why mentorship matters, because you need someone beside you, someone who can see all that you've buried in plain sight and who can hold the frequency that you're just learning to name. Someone who can midwife the next version of you, not by telling you who to be, but instead by staying present while you remember that yourself. This is precisely why people seek out coaches and mentors and spiritual directors and therapists and psychoanalysts, not to be fixed, but instead to be met, to be seen clearly without the collapse, and to be held in the liminal space between who they've been and who they're becoming. It's like Persephone descending into the underworld. We all must go down, but it's Demeter's grief, the field's longing, that calls us back up. We return not because we've conquered the dark or anything like that, but because someone has waited for our return. And over time, we learn not to live only in one world. We learn to carry the underworld with us into the day and to let the light into the depths. That is the work of integration, to become someone who can move between both realms and not in exile from either, but with reverence for both. That is health, not perfection, but permeability. And not the end of descending, but the ability to return and still be whole. So this is the invitation. Stop trying to become yourself in the vacuum of self-improvement. Stop treating your psyche like it's a project. And stop hiding your process behind some polished persona. You weren't meant to do this alone, even if you can, and even if you've had to. The truth is, many of us become brilliant because we had to understand what was happening to us. We weren't given a choice. We had to make sense of the chaos with no map, no guide, just instinct. We become the analysts of our own pain and the translators of our silence. Insight becomes survival. Analysis becomes armor, especially for the ones who were parentified too early, who grew up reading the emotional weather of the adults around them, who were praised for being mature and responsible and calm, when really they were just managing their own neglect. We learn to anticipate needs, to preempt conflict, to intellectualize emotion because no one modeled how to feel it. We mastered understanding so we could avoid being overwhelmed by it. But understanding isn't the same as healing, and insight alone can't hold us. So it's time to take off the armor. And I'm not suggesting that happen all at once, but just piece by piece. And to remember that the brilliance born of survival deserves to be met with gentleness, not more pressure to perform. Now something softer is calling. Something more relational. Something that can't be accessed through performance. And if you've been feeling that pull, if you've been sensing that it's time to let someone in, to let yourself be seen in this process, to be in a space where depth isn't just tolerated, but it's also required, you're not wrong. That is the next threshold. Not more mastery, but more mutuality. I think that's where our whole culture is moving into. I'll be sharing more in the coming weeks about a space that I'm creating for this very kind of work. It's a space where the symbolic meets the relational, where leadership, self-leadership, and even healing itself are deconstructed and repatterned at the nervous system level, and where the requirement isn't to be perfect or polished, but simply to be present. It'll be a space for depth, but also for play, a place where your inner world is not only seen, but also celebrated, where we remember that creativity and connection and coherence aren't luxuries. They are essential technologies of our becoming. So if you're longing for this kind of resonance, you are not alone. You can join the waitlist now if you'd like to be among the first to receive that full invitation when the doors open. I'm not rushing the invitation. This is just the first whisper as I build it out, the first door. But if this episode found you, it's because some part of you already knows you are meant to be met. You're ready to be mirrored. You're done doing it alone. And that field is already forming. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of Reverence for Reverie, a space for soul remembrance, where the self isn't something you build, but something you uncover, where depth is honored, not hidden, where presence is what matters and curiosity meets the soul. You don't have to carry it all alone. You were never meant to. The links to join the waitlist and connect with me will be in the show notes. And until next time, lead with your soul, love with your whole being, and let the reverie lead you. And I'll meet you there.